Congratulations, my goodness, it's such a stunning jacket. And just to, as a sidebar, I'm on the jury of a book jacket, the Oxford Book Jacket Prize, which is in its, I think, 10th or 12th year. And the jackets that they're creating now, like this one, is so evocative and so representative. I haven't read the book, but going by the title, it is a stunning, stunning book jacket, as I'm sure the book will be a river of discovery for a lot of us, certainly for me. So I wish you every success for the book and for all the journeys ahead. Thank you so much.
Start? Yeah. Hello everybody. After lunch is always a difficult session, trying to keep all of you engaged and awake, because I think one starts to feel sleepy, and this lunch was particularly good. Enjoyed it thoroughly, and I'm sure all of you did. So to get to the book now, I think first of all, since I don't think many of you would have seen it earlier or read it, I think we'll ask the author to tell us a little bit about the book and what went into the writing of the book. Mainly because I know that it has been a passion with him, this particular river. He has written about it, he has filmed it, he has watched it, he's done projects on it. And so let's, I think this river traveler is also a culmination of all of those years of traveling on the river. So let's ask him to tell us a bit about the book and how it came to be.
Well, thanks for that, Preeti, and I want to thank Shobha for releasing the book, and it's especially good that it's here in Aizawl and at the Aizawl Club, which is in its 125th year. So I'm very happy to be back in one of my favorite parts of the world. I've been coming here since 1983, my first visit, before many of you were born. So I'm very familiar with Mizoram and the state and its people. Not as much as I would, but should. But I've learned a lot. On the book, I think it was always a trigger for me when I was a child. I remember this one image has always remained with me. When I traveled to the river once, going to the river bank with my brother and my parents, I remember seeing this from the shore, dolphins dancing in the river. You know, what you see perhaps in movies or something. Dolphins dancing. Now you don't see them anymore dancing as much as they used to. But that image has stayed with me for life. And in a way, it grew on me. And the frame of this book, the spine of this book, is really lies in a film that the filmmaker Janu Barua and I made on the river before the book was written. So as the film was being made in Tibet and Bangladesh and Northeast India, Arunachal, and here in Assam, that the idea grew that one should write a book, because there needs to be a book of the river from the beginning to the end by somebody from the region. I'm not necessarily the best person to write it, but I've actually seen it, and I've been involved in issues that have connected me to people along the river. So that is something that I think encouraged me.
Also, the fact that the river traverses through 3 countries and very different geographies, and I think when you travel on it, as you did for the book and for all these other things I've mentioned earlier, you would have seen different communities, you would have encountered different traditions, different religious groups, different, even the politics of the region change as you go along the route of the river. So what stands out for you, and what was this journey like between the 3 countries that were being mapped as you traveled?
Well, the most extraordinary part of the journey was truly, there were 2, I would say. Assam and Arunachal I was fairly familiar with, but Tibet was extraordinary. I mean, nothing prepares, I think my opening line in the book of Tibet is, nothing prepares one for the scale or grandeur of Tibet. And that to me it was an incredible experience. And I'll just share a couple of things experiences which highlighted that for me. One is, if you know that poem, to hold infinity in the palm of your hand and eternity in an hour. We were filming, and I remember this road. I'm standing in the middle of the road, there's no traffic, okay? And it's going straight, as far as you can see, into the horizon. On the right side is buckwheat, mustard, and the river. On the left side are more fields, then mountains of rock and snow. And as a result of that, you feel very small, We may all have our own egos and all that, but nature tells you where you stand in the scheme of things. So that was certainly one experience. The other is, when you think of Tibet, you don't think of floods. You think of Assam, you think of floods, or Bangladesh, or places like that. So we happened to hit Tibet in the middle of the monsoon, when parts of the river were flooded. And at one time we had to cross the river. We couldn't see the road. But to keep to our schedule, you had to cross it. This torrent of water. And the driver started to pray, and somebody else started counting their beads, the rosaries, So you realize you're in a rather tough haul. And you go on, the vehicle is rocking, and you can't see the road. You don't know where the road is. You just hope that the driver knows where he's going. And suddenly I looked down. There's a photo of that in the book. The water is almost to the level of the mirror. Okay? So it's not something for the faint-hearted. But anyway, we managed to get across. But there are many stories like that which captured not just, I've tried to capture those, but also what it represents in terms of the human spirit, and what learnings it has given me.
Yeah, because it's really an interesting book, and I would highly recommend it, mainly not only because you learn about the river and you are traveling on the river with him and hearing about all these different communities, but there's a great deal of background research also that went into it. And I think you went to all sorts of, different libraries, including, I remember, London and British Museum, and looked at old records, looked at the diaries of travelers, British travelers, who mapped many of these regions which were totally unknown. So a lot of that is really interesting. And then the style, the easy kind of flow of the writing itself. So it's not boring, it's not dull, it's going to pull you in and you really enjoy reading it. But I think maybe we should hear you read a little bit, something that you like particularly yourself.
Well, I like the whole book, but I can't read that. But I shall read. I always say that at least the Tibet part of the book is about mystery, history, and spy masters. Because for many decades, if not at least a century or more, the Western world did not know whether the Brahmaputra and the Sangpo in Tibet were the same river. So many expeditions were launched to try and locate if this was the same one river, because it opened up opportunities for trade and travel and so on. And among the people who were trained to do these spying and surveying, because they're both doing survey work for the Survey of India, geography, basically mapping mountains, rivers, and so on, but they were also spying. They were keeping accounts of what they saw, the people they met, the trades they encountered, and so on. And I tell the story of one of them whose name was Nain Singh Rawat. And these were called the Pandits from near Dehradun. So Nain Rawat and other Indians joined the survey and were trained intensely not only in the use of measuring instruments but also in the art of spying. The Pandit was to become one of British India's international spy masters, changing disguises and languages, always on the alert, expert in riding and capable, even as he approached middle age of seemingly unending walkathon across the Himalayan heights. This well-trained, disciplined spy was dispatched in 1865 on the first of his great journeys for the Survey of India, traveling some 2,000 kilometers from Kathmandu to Lhasa, the cutting back west to Mansarovar and back down into India. On reaching the Sangpo, he was told that the river flowed east and then turned south into India. This was new information, which was a matter of importance and caused not a little excitement when it reached the Survey of India. And if I may just add to that, one of the spy master's tricks or equipment, you've all seen the Tibetan praying wheel. They keep spinning it. So in it is inscribed the pilgrim's prayer, Om Mani Padme Hum. Well, in its place was a prismatic compass and a roll of paper for making notes. And the rosary, in which they used to have 108 beads for the prayers, saying the prayers, had 100 beads so that they could count the steps. And that is how they mapped their journeys.
So, yeah, that's a really interesting bit in the book. Quite remarkable how intrepid and how ingenious they were in trying to map the distances and the route of the river. But coming to stuff that's going on today, meaning you see a lot of floods, you see so much natural disasters, devastation, and flooding, as you talked about it even in Tibet. So that brings me to this question of, do we really respect the river? Or are we letting our, the greed and the development agenda that governments have or that we have, we want more roads, we want highways, we want to build bigger dams, we want to cut forests to make these, enormous highways. How much does that damage? And how do you contain that damage? So, the respect that one should have especially for a mighty river like the Brahmaputra? And how do you contain the damage that one is seeing around?
Well, on a personal note, it really hurts me a lot to see the kind of work that's being that's being done to not just to the Brahmaputra but to many other rivers. Because rivers have a right, lesser humans have a right to life. Rivers have a right to flow. And if you think about it in the longer perspective, larger perspective, without rivers and without water, we wouldn't have life. They sustain us. And rivers have always inspired, singers, creators. You think of any great singer, at least there is one or more of his songs on the river. And but the dams, see, I'm not against development, but I believe that you can do it in a way that doesn't destroy the environment. But most engineers, I apologize if there are any engineers or aspiring engineers here, when they see a river, they see power. I mean, electric power or generation of power. And I think sometimes we should let nature be. I mean, there are other sources of tapping for power. And I think we should explore that much more effectively. The Chinese are building the biggest dam on the face of the earth, in the biggest gorge on the face of the earth, along the Sangpo, in what's called the Namcha Barwa Gorge. The impact of that, I don't know what it will be. The Chinese certainly are not to be trusted as far as information sharing is concerned. So I don't know what the impact of that will be. I don't think anybody really can say 10 years into the future. But one thing is clear. From the dams that are built, whether it's on the Indian side, the Nepal side, or the Bhutan side, or the Chinese side, what do dams do? Dams, hydroelectric dams, are built to generate power. They can only generate power if the turbines work. Turbines generate the power. And the generation of power is possible if the water flowing through them is clean. It is not packed with stones and debris, because that would damage the turbines. So the water you're getting out is cleaner without the chemical nutrients, without the biological nutrients that you need to sustain life, fish, life, and plantation, agriculture in the fields. So that's a simple thing that people forget. We are damaging ourselves in the process to, quote, develop, and not understanding the consequences of what we're doing.
So how would you make this information known and also get other people to become activists for the river or for many of the other natural, what we have, what's already existing, but which is dying slowly?
I can only speak for myself. We can only talk about something or actively work for a change when we understand the issues ourselves better. I can't tell anybody here to do something that I haven't worked on. I can suggest ideas. But for instance, in Mizoram, I know there's always been a problem of water supply, where there's thanks to the efficacy or non-efficacy of the rural water schemes, drinking water schemes. But there are ways we need to do our own research in an applicable way, so that we understand what's happening around us and do something that improves conditions around us. That's the only thing I would say.
Yeah, and one of the things that you've done, and you yourself also see it as a kind of a repayment to the river and all its, glory, all its kindness to you in all these many years that you've been mapping it, are the boat clinics, the clinics that are on boats and which travel to remote areas, remote islands on the river, which are inaccessible otherwise, but these boats carry healthcare. So do you want to talk a little bit about that incentive and how well it's been doing?
How many here have seen the Brahmaputra? Just a show of hands. Yeah. So I was traveling again for the film which preceded the book with my director. We were traveling on a ferry. Some of you will have heard of Majuli, this great river island in the middle of the river, one of the greatest river islands in the world, which is a center of learning and of monastic scholarship and so on. We were traveling to the island, and on the journey, I heard the story of a young woman who died in childbirth because she couldn't get to a hospital on time. And to me, that seemed quite stunning. She had died on the same ferry that we were taking on the reverse journey. You know, she was coming, and then I explored. I'm a journalist by training, or my profession is as a journalist. I dug a bit more, and I found that this is a young woman who was pregnant, who had a difficult pregnancy, and she had to travel from a village to catch a ferry carried in a stretcher. But she missed the ferry. So she and her family had to stay the night by the river. And anybody who's heard the river in Assam, the river, the Brahmaputra, it speaks, and it speaks, roars like a tiger, because there's no other sound at night. Morning they took the ferry, but they couldn't make it. She died. So I said to myself, this is really unacceptable, you know. And then I did some more digging and found, to my horror, that Assam had the highest maternal mortality in the country, which is more women died in childbirth in Assam than in any other part of the country. Not Bihar, not Uttar Pradesh, not Madhya Pradesh, Assam. So I said, this is unacceptable, we have to do something about it. But what? Then I thought of this idea that you can take medical care to people on boats. You can't build bridges everywhere, even though the government is trying to build bridges. You can't have helicopters landing to disperse health care. But boats, one of the oldest ways of transportation, carrying a new system, carrying care, health care, can do the work. So I started in 2005 with the first boat. We had won a small award for the idea. And now we have 16 boats, which work in 15 districts. We reach about 3.5 lakh people, about 2.5 to 3 lakh people every year with healthcare, most of them women and children. So it's something that at least has worked. It's difficult to work with the government, but it has helped us with funding and all that. So this is something we hold up as an idea whose time has come, an idea which is implemented and we can be made effective.
There's somewhere in the book, I think, where I read, where you call yourself a dreamer. And so what are these dreams that you have? What are these dreams for the river? What are the dreams for Assam and for this region, for the Northeast? And further still, what are the dreams for this, this entire belt that the river traverses through? Because increasingly what was once a syncretic kind of culture is now increasingly being divided. So what are these dreams that you dream, and how do you think these are going to come true?
See, one of the things you think about, dream about perhaps, is a time which is better, calmer and kinder for everyone. This is clearly not happening, but that doesn't mean you can't dream about it, you can't hope for it. One good thing that I see is that nobody is taking, abuse lying down anymore. This incident that took place in Delhi the other day is a clear example of that. When the 3 Arunachali women were abused, and the force of public pressure was such that they had to arrest these people, these this couple, and they're being charged, which is very important that people are standing up and being counted. I think all of us have to do that. That's one. Because it's not a question of belonging. It's about asserting who you are and what you are. That's one. The second thing is, at the same time, I've just written a column on this for the Tribune in Chandigarh, is that look at the contradiction. Because we are in Delhi, we are able to do that. In Meghalaya, 34 miners were killed. 34 miners were killed in a mine explosion. An illegal mine being operated, 3 illegal mines. One explosion killed 34 people. 15 of them were Nepalis. 13 were from Assam. 6 were from the local area. Nobody said anything about it. So that is where we must speak out. We cannot have one standard for one place and another standard for another place. There were no street protests in Meghalaya. And it is important that we say that the right to life is a right of every person. Doesn't matter who you are. So that is a very fundamental thing. It doesn't perhaps deal with the larger issue of dreams of what I want to see for Assam and so on. That will take a long time in the telling. But perhaps I can read something to share.
Yeah, read, and then I think we open it up because we have still 5 or 7 minutes left, so we can take a couple of questions.
So this is at the end of the book. Every journey has a beginning. Every story has a pre-story. Every ending has a sequel. This braided and unquiet river, Asia's most magnificent in my view, though neither its longest nor greatest, flows a long way to the end of all our stories, to the sea. Bhupen Hazarika, eternal balladeer of the Brahmaputra, sang, O mighty Brahmaputra, Brahmaputra of many arms, the abode of many a confluence, for millennia it has illumined to mankind the true import of assimilation. Elsewhere he speaks of his restless wanderings. I find these mirrored in my own travels. At the end of it all, though I have swum at the confluence of the seas, I am not weary. I have traversed the river, shared my secrets with it, and laid my fears and troubles to rest there. It too has spoken to me, and has been kind and generous in the midst of its vastness and power to someone who could not swim. It has taken me on many adventures, brought love into my life, taught me humility, the importance of valuing beauty in the interwoven tapestry of nature. That interconnectedness lies even in a grain of sand. Above all, the Brahmaputra has sheltered me and kept me safe. For me, that is enough.
And we'll have a Q&A session. Anyone with questions?
Thank you, sir. Sir, since you traveled to Tibet, what are the challenges you faced at Tibet? As a writer from India, as a writer and journalist from India, the Chinese are quite sensitive regarding Tibet. So, what were the challenges you faced?
Well, I must say that I went a long time ago, about 20 years ago, and that was actually not just to do with the challenge I faced was nothing to do with being a journalist or an Indian. It was the fact that India had just exploded nuclear bombs, and China and India were not talking, So we were denied permission for a long time. or not given permission. Then we were given permission. And we arrived there, and I could not find the film permit in my papers. So I didn't know what to do. I was at the Gongar airport in Tibet, and I didn't have the permit to film. So I had this nightmare of going back, being sent back, deported, nothing to do with being a journalist. And finally the officer, the senior immigration officer, he gave me a long speech about how India and China should be friends. I said, I can't believe I'm listening to this in the middle of the airport in Tibet. So, and anyway, he says, you have to pay a fine, then it's fine. So I paid the fine and got out. So that to me was the most challenging part of the journey. The other part of it was the atmosphere. You know, I've been I've had pulmonary edema because I was trekking in Ladakh once, walking in Ladakh, traveling in Ladakh, and had to be hospitalized. So I was always aware of that. And to me, it was amazing to see these kids who wanted to help. So we said, okay, carry our film equipment. They were running in front of us. They were just staggering, 12,000, 13,000, 14,000 feet. Air is rare, no? Oxygen is limited. So those were the challenging things. We didn't find any problems otherwise.
Thank you, sir.
Anyone else? Okay, I think as the host and MC, I also have the liberty to ask a question. Dada, how much were you influenced? If I'm not mistaken, I think Hazarika made a series of documentary on the Brahmaputra.
Yeah, I wrote the script.
Oh, you wrote the script. Oh, there goes my question. I just wanted to ask you, how influenced were you by the documentary? Because I watched, I think, one episode of that. It's really wonderful.
No, you're talking about the fictionalized one, Luit Kinare.
Yes.
No, that one I didn't do. There was another series that I...
No, the other series, the whole series.
Yeah.
I was talking about the whole series, not the Luit.
Oh, okay.
How influenced
So
were
that
you
one-
by that series of documentary in writing for this book? Did it help you?
No, essentially, you see, whether it is material by him or anybody else, it helped me in my own understanding of the river, because it's always good to see it from a different perspective. When he comes from that of not just a cultural icon, but somebody who's very sensitive to issues in the region, not just the river, and reflects it in his own music and his lyrics, and the way he took political positions. So all this played a part in, I can't sort of say X and Y played so more, but he was a friend of the family, he used to come home and so on. So yeah, all this has had a part.
Sorry, I missed your first part. I had a splitting headache. I had to go and pop a pill to the room just a bit. But I got towards the fag end of your talk. And then you talked about your ordeal in Lhasa after you lost the paper. Were you able to, because I wanted to connect a story, the person who actually discovered that Sangpo was Brahmaputra was a tailor in Darjeeling. His name was Kintup. Yeah. So
His story is there.
his story is there. Okay, great. So because I think if among the world explorers, he's hardly known. Only people like you, scholars or people with particular interest in, that part of the world, Tibet and. But I think he deserves much more.
Yeah, I told the story of Nayan Rawat, who was one of the Pandits. Kintup technically was the Pandit, but he perhaps did as much as any of the other explorers. This was a man who was basically employed by the Survey of India to explore Tibet. He went in with a Tibetan Lama who turned out to be a total drunk and very lascivious. He was having an affair with his host's wife and all sorts of things. And finally sold Kintup to slavery to his host to pay off a debt. Then he escaped and landed up in a monastery and fell at the feet of the Lama there. It's a long story, but Kintup's assignment was very simple and brilliant. It was to cut a number of logs and toss them in the Sangpo. There would be a receiving party waiting for the logs on the Indian side of the border, on the Indian side of the river. So if the logs came, and they were to come at a particular time. Now the whole calendar got messed up because he got detained and he sold into slavery. Finally, when he was able to do it, there was no party waiting at the other end. And his employer had died, transferred and then died. And he was discovered as one of the discoverers, quote, discoverers of the Brahmaputra Sangpo connection much later and recognized much later. So that is one of the many stories which are not told enough.